Team, Coach Gary here. This episode of the Brick and Block podcast features the audio version of my May 2021 column in Masonry Magazine. Now, you probably know the column as Full Contact Project Management. The title of the column you were about to hear is, Grandpa, What Was Free Speech? You know, it's said that Benjamin Franklin at the Constitutional Convention in 1787 was asked by a woman, what kind of government would our new country be, a monarchy or a republic? And Franklin's famous response, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. At the convention, the Founding Fathers debated their plans for the country and dealt with bedrock issues. On what would our country stand? Its foundations. What rights would we have? Where do those rights come from? The attendees were vitally concerned that our rights would be protected. They knew from whom those rights actually came. Part and parcel of that thinking was the right to own property and to operate a business, and all of that had extended to this present time. But today's world harkens back to the time of Franklin, and we ask ourselves the question, can we keep it? Can we keep those constitutional rights and privileges? The arguments of today, highly visible as they are, threaten not only our country, but our way of life, including life on our job sites, as well as on our communities. Okay, team, hang on, listen up, and prepare to move ahead. And now, Grandpa, what was free speech? May 2021. Grandpa, what was free speech? The subtitle is Just When You Thought All Was Lost. I was telling myself that things would be okay, that we'd get through all of this pandemic stuff and economic stress. But then I had this terrible dream or nightmare or thought, not sure which, and one of the kids asked me this question. Grandpa, what was free speech? What was that all about? Was there really a time in America when it was okay to speak your mind? We were talking about that in school, in history class, and we heard that once upon a time in our country, people actually thought that they could say or write what they wanted, what was important to them, without government and social media approval. And everybody in our class was like, no way, that's crazy talk. I had to tell him the truth. Yes, son, that's the way it was. For almost 250 years. Of course, there were some restrictions, laws. Laws which said you couldn't, as a joke, yell fire in a crowded theater, for instance, and cause people to panic and trample each other. But if you had a belief, you could say it or write it. But if it wasn't true, then you'd be caught in a lie because the news people would check it out and call you on it and expose you. This was called freedom of the press. But that was back then. By the way, we also had freedom of religion, but don't get me started on that one. But just then I woke up, came to, snapped out of it, whatever that was. But it was horrible. Some folks might think that I could be the only guy in America with such crazy thoughts in my head, but I suspect some of that is going on right now within a lot of people. So that gives me some hope. However, I don't think the nightmare that I had is impossible. We'll come back to that subject in a moment. I want to first share with you some positive things that are going on, because that's happening too on my podcast. For instance, there's a terrific short video that you have just got to see. So click on or go to brickandblockpodcast.com and you'll see the video. It's exactly what you need to see in these trying days, just when you thought all was lost. And when you get to thinking of that everything is falling down around you and going into the porcelain fixture, Go check out a video clip showing the resolve, the appreciation, and patriotism of a 14-year-old kid saluting the real superheroes of a bygone generation. Please don't miss this one. It might give you chills. It did me. More good stuff at the Brick and Block Podcast website. There are some phenomenal audio episodes about leadership, marketing, and project management, specifically for mason contractors and suppliers, along with an interview on training for the new tradespeoples that we need. There's some bright spots. For a lot of us, myself included, it seems like we lost a year. Perhaps we did lose 2020. And then again, maybe we just don't want to remember it. Not sure how it happened. Anyway, this is now 2021. Like it or not, here it comes. That said, seems like kids and families got the worst of it because most kids did lose a year of in-person schooling. Families lost a considerable chunk of income, security, savings, sanity. In my opinion, there's a forthcoming governmental invoice, I'm sure, being prepared for presentation to future generations for the stuff that we are about to use right now. And for some reason, the popular notion of today is that it's okay to pass on to our grand and great-grandkids the bills run up and cost-coded or expensed to COVID 2020. And you know what? It turned out to be so surprisingly easy that we now can go charging off things supposedly to COVID while keeping a surprisingly clear conscience. Take that, future heirs. Forget Visa. I've got my U.S. Gov card, and apparently I have an unlimited credit limit. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm a bit jaded, maybe just a little over the top, but as a part-time student of history, I know that this has happened before. People trying to take the easy way out. For instance, check out this 90-second nugget, a Coach Gary history lesson from only 80 years ago. Here's the picture. The world is on the brink of war, and British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flies to Germany and meets with Adolf Hitler. He returns on September 30th, 1938, and addresses a crowd hungry for good news. Neville assures the country that he and Adolf had a meeting of the minds, have agreed to never go to war against each other again, and he waves in the air the paper signed by both. Everybody cheers that we now have peace in our time. The very next day, Germany invades a neighboring country. Things get worse. Prophetically, Winston Churchill says to Chamberlain, "You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor, and now you shall have war." Sadly, within a year, September 3rd, 1939, Prime Minister Chamberlain again addresses the British people and informs them that they are now at war with Germany. You can't make this stuff up. By May 10th, 1940, nobody still has faith in Chamberlain, and he resigns, leaving the mess for someone else to clean up. Churchill takes over. But London is bombed almost nightly by Germany for many months, and then sporadically through May of 1944. Unfortunately, beginning in June of 1944, German V-1 and V-2 rocket attacks on London commenced and ran almost until the end of the war. Yikes! Coach Gary's takeaway. You can't just follow the easy way out, trying to make all people happy, if it leads you in the wrong direction and you violate your principles. Okay, I hear you out there. Hey, Coach, why this history lesson in a construction magazine? Is it a history lesson only? No, it's a lesson in leadership, and it plays out in many of your job sites more often than you'd like. Here's the thing. Too many contractors allow themselves to be bullied by other contractors who take advantage of them. They want to be seen as team players. Keep the project moving. You know the drill. But realize this. You can't always keep the peace. It's a poor strategy to never question or object. Don't roll over and perform extra work for free simply because others tell you so. What does the contract say? Bringing this to present day, it's the subject of a continuing discussion we're going to be having over these next several months on the Brick and Block podcast. And I'm going to personally lead that discussion. Heck, I wrote the book on it. It's called Get Paid for a Change, the contractor's blueprint for turning extra work into extra money through change orders. This is going to be all on audio for you. And we're talking about strategies that work. The goal of the podcast is to be an extension and expansion of the full contact project management column, but all of it coming to you in bite-sized chunks of info and wisdom that you can chew on while you're driving to a job site. brickandblockpodcast.com, the easy part of your workday. Okay, team, that's it for today. You can by email brickandblockpodcast@gmail.com. brickandblockpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to spell out the word and, A-N-D. Now be sure and subscribe to the podcast. It's important because we want you to join us for the next episode. Now, for the Brick and Block Podcast, this is Coach Gary. Thanks for stopping by.